Welcome back to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. This is a three-person episode, which rarely happens, but when it does, it either goes really well or goes really bad. We just got to coordinate the way we talk, like kind of like synchronized swimming, but just in a little bit more creative format. But guys, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. I've spoken to both of you individually about Bigfoot. Stephen, you connected me with Shane, and Shane, you showed me probably one of the most interesting Bigfoot prints or what would you it's a Bigfoot cast of like and you dropped one which really upset me, and it's the first time on this show I've ever had a heart attack. But I really appreciate you guys giving me the time, and I kind of wanted to let you guys introduce yourselves briefly, and then I wanted to ask you guys what's your take on a certain subject, but we'll get to that in a second. Stephen, would you like to reintroduce yourself, and then Shane, you can go next.
Yeah, sure. I'm from Southwest Arkansas. I've been here all of my life, and it's a great place to be. Flyover country, so we're not bothered with some of the big city things that go on in this country. So, and I like that part.
I'm Shane Church. I live in Burleson, just south of Fort Worth, near the big city. And I do have to deal with those things.
Yeah, he does.
I wanted to ask you guys what's your take on visual sightings of Bigfoots? I think through our individual chats, I don't know if you guys have had any specific sightings yourself when it comes to seeing an actual like Bigfoot, or if you've heard any of these experiences about people, like stories I've heard about people either watching them eat and be with family members, or even birthing one, like watching one give like have a child, a baby Sasquatch, and it's just got very interesting to me, much like it probably is for the public, because we always hear like you hear like just signs of them, like rocks stacked up or trees that are just things that are just not ordinary in nature that seem like they have to be made by something. And a lot of people bring those up as examples of Bigfoot, but these people were talking about real clear, like visual, like it's right in front of me. I can see it and it can see me. So I'm curious, Stephen, I'll let you go first, and then Shane, you can respond next.
For me personally, I've had I've had sightings. Most of them have been where I live at, and to me, one of the best sightings I ever had was one. It was just on the tree line. I had no idea it was there. I was leaving to go to a meeting in the evening time, and it was still really good daylight up in the yard. And in a draw just below the, there was a there was a Bigfoot standing down there. It was I don't know. I would say it was probably 7 feet tall, extremely well built, very athletic looking, and I took pictures of it. And it was the most disappointing pictures I've ever taken in my life. I wish that the pictures would have come out as well as what I was seeing, but with the shadows, it was basically just really dark pictures, and you had to lighten up the face just to be able to kind of see the face on the thing. But yeah, with that, it's to me, I'm kind of wondering with some of these people whenever they talk about all these sightings that they've had, if they're actually seeing them physically in the field, or if it's something like they're seeing them in their mind, which is something that a lot of people claim to do. You know, they've had a lot of sightings, but it's in their mind, kind of telepathically or something along those lines, I believe.
Now, Shane, let you give your response, but I also want to ask about mind speak. Does anybody familiar with that when it comes to some of the Bigfoots? Do you think that could be a possibility, like kind of similar to what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, as far as mind speak goes, uh, I mean, is it a voice in your head, or is it a feeling that's telling you to do something? I don't know. I
Yeah.
mean, I've never experienced it. As far as seeing one, I've never really seen one, and I think I've been close. I think the closest I was last December. We were at private property. They're off the grid. I mean, off the grid. And uh, they had texted me and said that something was happening outside of their barn dominium, and because we were going to go later that night, and then we repped in on neutral, and just kind of slowly came in and parked about 15 yards. It sounds funny because I'm a front, but Gus and Bill went to go talk to the owner. Darren got out. He had his noise canceling headphones or enhancing headphones. All he said he could hear was wind. I was like, you probably just need to throw those away. So I grabbed my audio equipment, and as I turned left, boom, 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 boom. 7 steps. Boom, 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 boom. It was gone. I literally think we crept up on these things. And so Gus and I go looking for it, couldn't find them. It's like this thing was toying with us, like we're, I don't know, infants in the woods. So I haven't seen one, and I'm getting closer.
What about when you hear other people's stories? Kind of like for me, I'm getting people's resources and I'm hearing their kind of experiences in a sense. I mean, has any experiences or stories changed your mind or been more questionable when it comes to visual sightings, when it comes to narrowing down specific points of maybe defining these creatures a little bit more? I think my episode with Shane, I'm just more in belief of like being able to kind of put more of a body structure to these things, especially with the cast that he has of the feet and how they walk. I think that's pretty important because I think everyone sees the stereotypical Hollywood version, and that's kind of like their idea of it. But then you start to question more about like, well, how do they walk? Do they walk like the one in the Gimlin footage, or do they walk a little bit differently, where it's kind of like, less pressure on their heel or heel to toe, just anything that would be slightly different, a little bit of information that could just give us a better description visually for us in our minds to be able to perceive.
Oh, well, from what I've heard, they kind of walk like they're on a trapeze. That's what I've always heard. That, that's spot on. But they're walking a tight line or something. Now, as far as the visual changing your mind, when I first got into this, I didn't know if it was I still don't know because we didn't even have a specimen, right? Animal, man, paranormal, but you start hearing encounters, and there's one gentleman that had one as a kid, and unfortunately he's terminally ill, and he wanted to share his experience. And as a child, he would go just to the back of his house, step right out into the woods, talking about the Kayamichis, and he saw this. I mean, as a kid, it probably looked even bigger, but as an adult, he's like, it had to have been like 8 foot tall. But he said, and what he called it was a Superman, a huge man, gray skin, the big feet, but his face looked either Native American or Aboriginal. So it's like, are they a kind of people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's there are quite a few reports of people who have seen them. They've actually looked at them through a rifle scope because maybe they were deer hunting or hog hunting, something like that, and they couldn't pull the trigger because it looked so human. And I can't prove or disprove any of it, but I know that the stories exist to where people claim that they have um, had children with some of the women who have been taken away from their tribe, stuff like that. And that's a really fascinating thing. And if that's the case, then they have to be at least a type of human to be able to produce an offspring with a human. So
Now, are those stories that are relatively recent of recent years, or are they more folklore? Because in the old folklore of the Yeti, they talk about that these Yetis would come down from the mountains and take people out of their homes and into the mountains. So it sounds similar a little bit.
mhm. Yeah, well, there are. I know that took place in the Pacific Northwest in the 1800s. there was a missionary who gone out there to preach, set up a mission, and he had reports of those and how they would usually try to keep all the women and children protected, by the warriors being on the outside of the camp, things like that. But there are also reports of them in Oklahoma where some of the Native Americans have actually had stories to where, say, a young woman would be taken by one and end up producing offspring. So, it's I haven't witnessed the offspring myself, but it's those stories do exist from people that I thought I believe are trustworthy anyway.
Shane, what are your thoughts on old folklore stories that do they bring some more significant weight to what you're researching or what you're out there looking for?
Oh yeah, I love old encounter stories from like 40s, 50s, 60s, you name it. I'll absorb it. You never know what kind of information you're going to get out of it. But when someone retells stories for some reason, like in the 70s, I don't know, because I was a little kid, and that's when I kind of first saw the Patty film. It just kind of resonates with me. And seriously, like who's gonna really go make this stuff up? All these people that are telling these stories from back in the day, or I mean, are they rich? Do they make all this money off the subject? I just don't see a reason for making it up.
It is pretty shocking, though, that, like, I mean, at least in the relatively recent years, or maybe just because I'm stumbling across it, there seems to be a lot more like normalization of the whole discussion around it. Like in the 70s and like 80s, you would hear like a coast to coast program or something like that that would really play it out there, like one episode or something. But it seems like I'm coming across a lot more researchers and a lot more people that are open to speaking about some type of experience that they had. So it's a little bit more out of the realm of like, oh, this one person that I heard on a show a couple of years ago said this. Now it's like you can talk to someone and they're like, there is this one thing, and it's like it's kind of like the paranormal. It's opened up doors now.
And whether we like them or not, the show that's really popular on the Animal Planet there for a few years, that I think that relaxed a lot of people to the point where they were a little more willing to say that they had seen something. It's actually, Shane, I know you're familiar with Texarkana, and between Texarkana and Red River, which is just a few miles, less than 5 miles, I know I know one woman who works at a bank down there, and she actually saw one. She was taking one of the farm to market roads to work, trying to avoid the interstate or whatever. Maybe it was during the time when they were doing all the construction. But she had a sighting there, and I believe another one of her coworkers had one there as well. And that's something that you really don't typically think of, is seeing one in a city the size of Texarkana, which is probably what, 50,000 or something, maybe. It's not just real big, but I mean it's the biggest city to me from where I live at. So
What about when it comes to areas that you feel like shouldn't be attached to Bigfoot? Like if it's certain things you can't get with when it comes to Bigfoot. Like for me, it's hard to get with the actual experiences people talk about seeing one get birth. I have never even seen one. I have never even seen any like evidence to remotely get close to that. So that's like the way far out there for me. But what's one for you guys? Like is Mindspeak one, or is there any other areas that you feel like that you've never really looked into because you just don't really buy it or you don't have any evidence that has brought you to a point of understanding it?
I just kind of take it in stride, man. If it's gonna happen to me, it's gonna happen. I haven't looked it up or investigated it. If like mind speak's gonna hit me and it hits me, I'm gonna be like, hey, this is real, dude.
I mean, how do you block that though? Like, how do you block Mindspeak? There's no way to do that.
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know how you could block it. I will say this.
Spoiled hat.
Yeah, and I've told you, I think I mentioned that on the last time we talked, Robbie, was I know quite a few people who told me about the mind speak. People that I know. I mean, I like them. I don't think they're lying to me at all. They experience it stuff, and I've actually seen. Whether I should tell it or not, I'll go ahead and tell it. I've actually seen a video of something moving through the trees, and a person videoing told it to stop, and it answered no. Whether that was a Bigfoot or not, I don't know. But I'm just going to say I've seen the video, and I don't know how it could have been faked. It's, it's pretty crazy. It's more like the predator type thing, not quite the same, but similar to that. And this was within the city limits of a large city.
What about when it comes to a story that has you guys 100% convinced that this is like the most credible story, like one you would reference if anybody was new to the Bigfoot research of like, this is 100%, this is what happened?
Yeah. Well, the one for sure that I'm never going to doubt is going to be Williams' story, his first encounter in 1977. That's the one with him. He, all the emotions that he ran through from seeing that, being a 17-year-old kid, and I'm never going to doubt what he's told on that for me.
Shane?
Oh yeah, lunch for solid, man. Let's see. Okay, Denny Coleman. When we got in contact with him and went out to his property, and his father had owned it prior, and his dad's not quite a fifth wheel, like a little trailer home, maybe like a single wide, something like that. Well, one had tried to tear into the corner of that home. It's still out there. It's outstanding. Right there in front of the hole, it was kind of muddy and it left some prints. Denny's dad's like, on the sheriff. Sheriff comes out and looks at the indentions in the ground and is like, that's Bigfoot. And the sheriff got a hold of Moneymaker. Moneymaker goes out there, and Denny's dad says, I don't want any Bigfoot people on my property. And he kicks them all out. Well, now Denny owns the property, and we get to visit it now, and it's very unique because as you descend, so Stephen, on the north side of Pride 40 Acres, where they do Honubi.
Yes.
So as those hills are kind of descending, going north, Denny lives on the descent. And it's like the perfect highway for anything to travel, and he gets a lot of activity out there.
Yeah. But that's also the same area where the Humphrey brothers had their, they put up with him for years. Mike has never done a podcast. I don't know if he ever will. But man, some of the stories that Michael told me with him and his brother Tug was said, man, they could be sitting in a house watching TV, and all of a sudden you look up and there's one, you see the face of one is sitting there watching TV with him. Stuff like that. Extra deer legs. They would hunt. So they would throw the deer legs in the dog pen, and they said, they go to counting deer legs, and there would be extra deer legs in the dog pen that they didn't put in there. Stuff like that. It's crazy, and that's something that I've actually experienced just a little bit. We have one outside dog, and that was something that we had a year or two ago, or a couple of years ago now. Is I was finding deer legs in the yard that were not cut; they were broken. That's pretty crazy to me. But it's stories like that. That's it. He's talked about the rocks being thrown, and he told about one time him and his brother, they were both outside, and they had a rock that was thrown right in between them. He said you could hear the rock before you saw it. It was thrown so fast. But I mean, whenever I talked with him, we were sitting across the picnic table from each other. I was looking him in the eye when he was telling me these stories. So I don't doubt what he's told me either.
What about the conflicting accounts of violence and then things that aren't violent? I'm hearing way too many varying perspectives on like that they're violent, that they're breaking into things, or they're destroying things, or people feel threatened. And then other times where they just seem like they're peaceful creatures, where I'm like, it's just certain area depictions of where they might be, and maybe it ranges from area to area, or maybe it's the vibe or energy somebody's giving off. I mean, it makes it a lot harder to like get a straight picture. And I think for a lot of people, they want to put it in a box, and you just can't put this in a box.
I think they're kind of like people. You're going to run into different people all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Some are going to shake your hand, some are going to flip you off.
Yeah.
I think the intelligence in these creatures gives them that in their personality. Like they can make that decision. Like, I don't want these people in the woods. Look at that hairless, ugly thing with the blue hat on. He's got to go.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely agree with Shane on that. You're going to run into
That
different
I'm ugly.
No, no, not at all. Yeah, and I really believe that a lot of it is going to be how someone interprets their encounter. It's sometimes I've been scared before, and I've been scared pretty bad at times, but it wasn't because the Bigfoot was actually doing something really aggressive to me. It was more me than them that caused my fear. Just it's at Carter Lake one time. I was out there with some other researchers, and I had done a call, and we got coyotes to answer, and had one coyote that was, I don't know, probably 80 yards away from the rest of the pack. And one person had already drove past this parking area where we were at, past a big tree, and they backed back out. So I was thinking there wouldn't be anything down there. And it was cold, so the rest of the people, they went and got back in the vehicle while I was standing outside. And something took off from by that really big tree at Carter Lake, and it scared me. I had a flashlight in the front pocket of my hoodie. And the first three times I reached for the flashlight, I missed it. And what scared me so bad is whenever I heard this noise taking off, is I didn't know whether it was coming towards me or going away from me. And yeah, that rattled me. I can't lie, that shook me up. But I can't say that it was being mean or aggressive to me. That was me just being scared because I didn't think there was anything there. So,
Man,
so
I'm telling you, those situations, your heart goes right here.
it goes right up in your throat.
Now, do you believe that they have some type of similarities with humans? Like there's some evolutionary thing there? Or do you believe that it's something more like they pick up from watching? And it might just be some habits that have later developed that could be similar to ways would act when we're in nature. I mean, nobody acts like how they do in the city compared to when they're in nature. Everyone's pissing on every tree that they can find. It's like we're, marking territory, but it's something we're different when we're outside of our, I guess, a lot of people's base establishments in society. When we're out there in the forest, we're a lot different people. And I think that the same, at least style or personality types that I've seen or heard from people have kind of explained these creatures in ways that is just like how we act in nature, which makes me think observing. But also, a lot of people bring up the old evolutionary factors.
As far as evolutionary stuff goes, you go to Glen Rose, Texas, at the Creation Evidence Museum, where you'll see a human print next to a dino print. That kind of kills. evolutionary
I
theory.
watched a chimp in a zoo grab a stuffed animal, and the first thing it did was rip its head off and then start jacking off with it. I know we come from chimps, 100%. There's no doubt in my mind.
Oh
It
man.
was so quick where I was like, exactly what I would do if I was stuck in a glass cage, 100%.
Yeah.
So I went to this museum like 2 weeks ago. I was trying to get a hold of Dr. Carbaugh.
Oh
He
yeah.
wasn't responding to emails. I'm sure he's an
Wait, who's
older
Dr.
fella. And
Carball?
Dr. Carl Baugh, he's a scientist at the Creation Evidence Museum in Glen Rose, Texas. There's a lot of the dinosaur tracks excavated right in that area. And so I brought him a replica, and I ended up talking to the scientists behind the glass, and man, they were pointing things in the track that I've been pointing out. So I know I've been doing my homework, and I know what I'm seeing. I'm seeing,
Mm-hmm.
and I've actually given them coordinates to that area, and we're gonna see what happens, man. Like they've got a library of footprints and resources, and I don't know where it's gonna go. It's still in its infancy, but I just got to keep pushing, man. Got to keep pushing this.
Yeah. That right there is very, very interesting, Shane, that they would take an interest in this. It um I don't know. It's really, really interesting to me, and I believe the biblical stories, of how there was some genetic manipulation that took place. Whether that's really the case with the creatures we call Bigfoot or not, I don't know. But it seems like that they are, as I said before, if they can breed with a human, then it means that they're at least human to some degree. Whether there's been something else that's gone on in the past that put them here, I don't know. But you had all these different um, skeletons, that have been brought up. Denisovan, all the other stuff that's kind of makes you wonder if there was something human-like. There's always been something human-like around, just like what we're seeing now. That's very, very close to human, but not quite. And that's the thing that from my observation, or what I call my observation, or what I've been able to put together, because I've never seen one give birth. I've heard them scream in the springtime before, and that's I've got three other witnesses that can testify to that. Exactly what that scream was. Maybe it was one giving birth. I really can't say for sure, but it's that's truly fascinating. Then you also have the stories of like the Kandahar giants. There were multiple giants that were killed in Afghanistan in the early 2000s. So I certainly don't believe that those things have been wiped out. Somehow they have survived um, cataclysm, and there are more reports of them in the northern part of the western United States than what a person would think. So,
Well,
and that's kind of what I wonder with some of the things that people see.
a lot of people bring up the point of how could they remain hidden for so long? Like where we don't have any actual like video, like no one's big media sources have been like, holy shit, like there's this thing right here. I got it on video. And I believe more in the evolutionary factor, only on a concept of we have those like Neanderthals and a bunch of other things that we all went our own evolutionary track there. And we're just like the only ones, I guess, left. But there's other species of ape that have kind of derived it from each other. So I started looking at that like that could be a possibility, 100%. But the fact that no establishments or giant sources have really opened up the idea, like the Smithsonian. I mean, I know they steal shit all the time, but there's a lot of things where I start going, why have have they chosen not to even explore or incorporate a lot of that stuff into some of their works on history? We know about other species of ape. That's relatively well known now. That's not like conspiracy stuff. That's like that there's factual evidence and documentation and records to date that yes, there was this. But they don't talk about it. And it makes me kind of like, I mean, a clear example is I talked to a guy a while back on my show who was just in the UK looking through the river up there, looking for iron bog sites that are old Viking remnants. And he found evidence that would support that we don't really know where the Vikings went. They kind of just gone. Everyone thinks that they conformed or went into something else. But he was like, I found this that dates a little bit later than our last evidence of Vikings. And that everything down there in the UK, the researchers were like, we're not touching that because it shows we have pagan roots. So they're not looking into it because they're afraid of some pagan root history to it. Where I start going, if it's something that minuscule, what else are you guys not looking up to? And you're just teaching people history the way you want it to be taught.
Yeah. With that right there, I'll go ahead and get on my soapbox for a minute. The really unfortunate thing is that we have gatekeepers in this community, or what we call a community. You have gatekeepers, and Shane and Brian, I know they can testify to the fact that that's real.
Oh yeah.
And he that guy's not the only one. There was another one who's no longer alive anymore. For whatever reason, he passed from natural causes. I guess I really don't know the story.
Probably harboring too much hate.
Yeah, it could have been, but you have people like that who, if it doesn't fit into the box that they're supposed to keep everything in, then they're going to completely ignore it. They're going to put the evidence away. They're going to throw it away. Whatever else, it's I say unfortunate, and that's an understatement to how I actually feel about it. Because if everybody would get on board, I think we could be a lot farther along with this than what we are. Maybe the world wouldn't think that we're all a bunch of people who eating half-baked bread all the time to come up.
Well, do you think a lot of these people are purposely doing this because they get a rise out of it? Obviously, fighting with other people and trying to diminish people's experiences. Like, I never would diminish anybody's experience. It's just not who I am. But I've noticed on some of these groups on Facebook, not Shane's group. Shane's group is pretty positive, but other Bigfoot groups where people are like, just post your best evidence. And then when someone does post something that might be just an interesting thing, like an article or something, there's just people in the comments just lighting it up. And it's like that with the JFK subject too. But I start going, is some of this like purposely, like this has got to be purposely intended, not just to get a rise out of people, but because people think that they're on a higher platform than others, that they're might have some type of status where they feel like they're speaking truth and trying to diminish conspiracy beliefs because they think it could be harmful. And then there's what I would believe. I mean, the government involvement. I do believe that there's a lot of censorship on certain areas like this because the government has a certain, I don't know why they're doing it, but I just believe that there's a lot of censorship because they don't like certain things out there in what they would call their public space, which is really all of our open social circles. Doesn't have to be for nefarious reasons. It's just they like when people all are on kind of the same page, and that page kind of is what they write.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
it's the lazy river. Gonna keep it just.
Yeah, but I'm usually getting served drinks on the lazy river. This is a little bit like more bullshit.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I used to be a lifeguard. Stay out of the lazy river, dude. Trust me. Okay, so as far as the government goes,
You're just gonna leave me on that? Really? Come on now.
yeah, we'll talk about that off camera, dude. So as far as the government goes, I guess what we need the Navy to show some video of Bigfoot because we already got the UAP thing done. People are looking in the skies going, "Oh crap, that's probably real now." And then as far as the community goes, you got a lot of people that hate. You got people that don't go out in the woods. They're not boots on the ground. They can sit on their couch and be mean or evil or ridicule, and a lot of people just like to stir up stuff.
Yeah.
And then you've got a block of folks in the Bigfoot world who are kind of sticking to some kind of narrative because it affects their bank account.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's how they're making their money. I'm not making money off this. This is my hobby.
Yeah,
I've got a job. And that's why I'm going to keep on pushing forward with the way we're doing, because I think that getting positive alliances from other groups, and we're just kind of focused in the South. I mean, I'm not running for president here, right?
Right.
We're just trying to grab some folks in the South, and hopefully it's going on, around other states. And it's the only way it's going to work. Because if not, we're just going to keep on bickering and saying that's fake, you're a hoaxer, that's not real. And instead, look at people's evidence, obviously, not from anyone else's point of view, from your perspective, what you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that helps the community.
Yeah. 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 With that right there, I've always been a firm believer, in who's funding who. If somebody's being funded by something, I'm convinced, there's going to be some bias in it by whoever is funding the face of the gatekeeper, so to speak. It's trust the science is something that I shouldn't say that. You're going to have to put this on.
Don't do that.
Yeah, I won't say that. I won't say that. But in times, it's been very frustrating to me because it's almost as if people like Shane and I and everybody else who has evidence of some kind, it's almost as if we're waiting on an adult to tell us, okay, what you have is legitimate.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I am with it sometimes.
But where would an academic or someone in a lab coat say it's legitimate if they know they're going to ruin their whole academic career? I mean, it just became normalized now to be able to talk about UAPs from an academic standpoint, even though people have tried to do that for years and they were afraid of losing their pension and other things.
Yeah. And that's the big thing. Those are the people who are afraid to lose everything they have. If they come forward and acknowledge this, to me, that's it. If whoever's funding them doesn't want it to come out, then they're going to make sure that they do whatever they can to make sure it doesn't come out. They're going to give you a little bit of a taste and a little bit of a tease with it, and that's as far as they're going to go. So, in my view.
What about, I think I might be saying the name wrong, but Terry Moore, the Terry Moore incident, if I'm not mistaken, Terry Moore or Terry Crew?
Oh,
Terry Crews.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm surprised I remembered that, but what are your guys' stance on that one?
With him, was he the guy that wound up? He had some stompers, I think. Wasn't he the guy that actually had some stompers? But people who have gone back and looked at the photographs from some of the early stuff that he found actually was probably legitimate. And then he began faking it to start messing with the loggers out there, I think, if I'm thinking of the right guy.
Well, I know from him, it was stemmed the term or word Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Through the media or the paper.
What do you think has done the most damage to the Bigfoot community besides like infighting in between the groups, but like when it actual comes to actual stories and representations that have been kind of like the Gimlet footage is a good example only because that it's so controversial now and I didn't really realize that, but I think everyone has seen it. I think it's a good introduction to it, but I think it's been because the guy went back on it. So it was like that's what you didn't want to happen, was that you didn't want there to be kind of like this thing that goes back on this footage. I'm wondering if there's anything like that are there any pure points that really anyone hasn't just done it for money or hasn't just done it it diminishes the reputation of the Bigfoot community, which means like you need to have at least. Well, it's like you're not doing it for money though. Like there's people like you guys that I enjoy talking to because you're just doing it because you love to do it. It's not like you're not hurting anybody. No one should be telling you that you can't do this because you're just learning and you're just interested for yourselves, and also to get the word out there a little bit. But you're not profiting off of it, which completely tears out the whole X-Files factor that they just do all this stuff to get views and to get money from things. But there's not really a lot of what I would call, I mean, do you have any points out there that are still kind of have relatively the story has stayed the same, like Bill's story? or any other things that you've heard that no one's really selling it to try and sell it, but they're just there telling you what they experienced?
Yeah, it's
Mainly, that's why I go to conferences,
mhm.
because you're going to meet people just like that, and they're going to show you things that they don't show other people.
Yeah, but a lot of those
And it's
conferences happen out west. I'm not out west. I'm on the East Coast.
Yeah.
oh,
The
So besides moving, we got to try and find a better point to get some interaction with some of the East Coast people, at least city folk.
yeah, yeah. With the with I tell you, I'm not sure what state you're in, but I know
Maryland.
there's like Maryland. Okay,
Yeah.
I know there's a couple of guys in Ohio that I've met. Uh, Kane Michaels, Eric Tipton. Those guys are legit. Guarantee you they are. I don't know how many thousands of hours they spent in the field, how many years they've been doing it, but yeah, they've come up with some really good stuff. You know, it's a lot of good evidence. You know, they have they followed the trails, the markers and stuff like that. I was able to confirm some of the stuff that I thought I knew with them a couple of years ago when I got to meet them. And the things that I was finding in Arkansas was the same thing that they would find in Ohio or Kentucky or Alabama, Georgia, whatever, because they're a lot better traveled than what I am, and they would find the same things in multiple states. So that to me, that right there is that's evidence. You know, it's not as mind blowing as the evidence that Shane has there with his cast, but yeah, it's that's evidence as well. You know, you can follow that and you can confirm it for yourself if you get in the right area.
How difficult is it for you, either Shane or Steven, when someone comes to you with an experience, but they don't want to, like you mentioned, Steven, about people not wanting to do a podcast about it or not wanting to kind of publicize it? Which I mean, it gives it more respect to their story because they're not looking for money or attention or anything like that. But it's also like we do need as many voices about this topic as possible to really kind of, I mean, a lot of people, you can find it easily if you just type in Bigfoot, but a lot of people really want to know more. They want to hear the experiences and the stories, but I feel like a lot of people are hesitant to share those because it is a sensitive subject, especially if you experienced it yourself. And then there is that fear of like, what will someone think if I share this? And I hear it all the time with like UFO experience or stories. So like, I'll just throw my crazy out there. I was like, well, don't throw the crazy out there. Just tell me what you experienced, man. Let's have a conversation about it.
It's for me in this area here. You know, I've lived in this community, this small town, all my life, and the people that I've received some stories from, you know, they're people who are, you know, one of the men, he's up in his 80s now. He's never gone public with it. He's never going to go public with it. I mean, I've shared his story before with other people, but he what he saw, it's he can't unsee it. He told me uh, that's the thing. I mean, because he simply did not want his reputation tarnished in any way, you know. And that's quite a few people in this area, you know. I mean, if you get to meet some people and they get comfortable with you, yeah, they're going to share things with you. You know, it's just like Shane. He collects stories all the time when he goes to a conference and he meets people. You know, Shane, I'm certain that a lot of the majority of the people that share things with you, they've never gone on the podcast, and good ability they have no desire to. But yeah, there's more of these.
Especially those like they come up to you and they're all kind of meek. They're just kind of like, hey, this has been on my property for like 10 years. They're just like, holy crap, can I live on your property? You know?
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Now,
yeah.
Stephen, you did mention earlier off air, then kind of in the beginning a little bit, but you had some stories that you wanted to get Shane's thoughts on. I'm
Oh,
curious now.
yeah. I want to start this story off, and I want Shane to finish the story.
Okay.
We were at Thornton's Wells, and man, I don't remember how many of us were down there, but Dustin, He's, uh, he had his audio recorder on, and everybody had kind of given up on the night and thinking that we weren't going to hear anything or anything like that. And Dustin had just turned his audio recorder off, and we got, I guess we'll call it the craziest owl call I've ever heard in my life. This was like less than a minute after Dustin turned his audio off, and he came walking back to the truck so fast you thought he was running. he, was, he, he was beside himself because he had just turned his audio recorder off and missed this great thing. So me and Shane and Dustin and Lauren, we all walked back to the area closer to where this audio came from, and she was in the front. And she came as close to getting hit by a rock as anybody I've ever been out in the field with. I mean, it missed her. It landed within 2 feet of her. So, and then Dustin, he was going to pretend to throw a rock toward where the rock came from. And Shane, I want you to finish this off because your version of it is just great.
Now, from what I remember,
his elbow popped.
Oh yeah, that's right. He had an old man situation going on right there.
He got the pickleball elbow.
Yeah, dude, that's true. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Oh my! Hey, but Steven, wasn't that the same night he was looking through your night vision?
Yes.
And he saw a tree peeker, is what they call it, like something peeking around the tree.
Oh yeah. Well, that was actually the next night. I think this happened Friday night when Dustin was going to pretend to throw the rock out there where the rock came from. Then he turned around and he throws it the opposite direction. His elbow popped, and I can't remember if he went to his knees or not.
He was hurt.
Shane's recreation of it was maybe been the original.
Now, have you guys gone on many trips or explorations together, or was that just the one time?
We've been
usually when I see Steven and Lunsford and those fellas, it's when we go to South Arkansas, and it's always met with a handshake and smiles, man. It's always great, dude. It's like we have another home.
Yeah, and it was was it that same night that we were at Thornton's Wells, or was that a different time, Shane? Whenever we'd been out, and everybody was tired, and me and you and Dustin, I think we actually all laid down on the boat ramp because we were tired and our backs were. And I had audio going, and that's when you found that didgeridoo sound in the audio.
Oh yeah.
You remember that?
Look at me! I'm getting all excited again, like I'm there. This is the first time.
Because I don't remember hearing that in real time. And whenever you play it, man, it's kind of like, whoa, that is a really, really deep didgeridoo sound. It's really interesting. I don't know if you've got that thing handy where you can send it to Robbie or not, but and people can make up their own mind as to what it is. But I mean, that was one of those times that, man, it was one of those wild things. And the interesting part about that is that's where my daughter Sydney, she'd had a sighting there in 2018. So, I mean, the activity's there. And I remember Shelly was with us. That's where we also found the tree we never did find where that tree came out of the ground, the one that was weaved through those other trees, where we walked in below the well, the oil tanks down there.
Yeah. And Rob, this place, it's one of those places that you go and you park and you get out and you start walking around. And if you're by yourself, you go, I probably shouldn't be out here by myself.
Yeah. That's like most places, even when I walk into a store.
But that Mercer Bayou runs through there.
Yes.
So you got the bayou. You got gators. You're definitely low on the food chain pole out there, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
you got all that cardio, you could run. You could run away from all
Shit,
that
dude, it only works when I'm on a treadmill, not when I'm out in the forest.
stuff.
I get too distracted by shit. Um, Steven, I have to ask, where did you take your Dogman photos at? And also, have you guys come across more than just Bigfoot stuff, like things that have changed your mind on other areas, not just Bigfoot related, but just things that you didn't think existed? Obviously, Shane, we talked about how much you can really pull out of a footprint, but when you really look at like, I mean, just an individual either footprint or fingerprint. I mean, you got to examine that on a deeper level. You have a more humbling aspect for nature, and you realize that we might live in these cities that we built up around us, but we're not the only things out here. And, being out in nature all the time is a very humbling experience.
Mhm. Yeah, the Dogman photo, that's from the area that William and I call Ground Zero, which is not very far from my house. It's
Time to
not
move
far.
neighborhoods.
Yeah, it's just a few miles away. Uh, the Dogman photo, that's William and I were there together. We would normally make a clockwise rotation checking on cameras, and on that day, for whatever reason, we decided to do a counterclockwise circuit to check our cameras that day, and we came up out of a draw, and I saw a blackhead drop down below the broom sage grass out there in that field, and that's when I told William, I said, "They're here. We're not alone out here. They're with us." And the dog man happened to be out there in the field looking at us, and it's kind of like it was. I think it was a surprise to see us as we were to see it. The other thing about that story is I had found a Dogman trackway like 18 months prior to that, and I didn't make a big deal out of it because one, I didn't really want the Dogman to be true. I didn't want it to be real, and I definitely didn't want it to be in our primary research area. And but that day, I mean, it was there. I didn't want William to quit on me because we got a Dogman. Is basically what my thought was. And we got the Dogman picture that day. Snapped a few pictures that day of it. I wish I would have had the presence of mind to have taken video. That would have been so much better. Then people could have argued over that for the next 50 years whether that was real or not. And then the second Dogman trackway, I at least did have the presence of mind to take a picture of it. I should have done more. That's why I say when you're out there in the moment, a lot of times it's really easy to not do things that you know that you should do. But I think between all the excitement and the adrenaline rush, that's probably what hinders a lot of people from capturing better better footage
There's a really
than
good example of that I saw this morning. A guy opened up his door to his house and he was whistling, and there was a giant black bear right in front of his, like, I mean, right around the corner, just popped his head. And he's in the middle of a whistle, just goes, ooh, and then shuts the door. I go, I don't even think I'd be able to shut the door. I was watching it through a phone video and I froze. And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize. Like, you think you would be able to pull your camera out and all these things if a UFO comes by or all this. A lot of times you're just stunned at like, am what I look if what I'm looking at is actually there or not. Like, this is just you're so stunned by it and shocked because your brain hasn't really perceived it before. So it's kind of like when you see, I mean, I hate to use the example, but like when a little child sees something they've never seen before and they're kind of just stunned and they say the first thing that comes to your mind. You're not supposed to say that. That's rude. But they don't know because their brain doesn't know how to process. This is the first time they've ever came across this thing. And that's kind of like it with it is with some of the Bigfoot experiences, UAP experiences.
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah.
I agree.
Uh,
Steve, I don't know if you might have heard this, but in December, I think it's 63 runs into 259.
mhm.
And you turn right on the 259. We're gonna go, into the bison area that we call the bison
Yeah.
area. As soon as we turn right, in the sky was a disc about another pine tree high up. So it's not like it was a way, 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 way up there. It was, you could see it, orange
Yeah.
twinkling lights going like this. That's how I knew it was kind of like a disc, and they were twinkling.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah,
And we didn't film video of it because we're just like, what the hell, man?
Now I've done the whole I've done the whole UAP discussion with like people who are like on Ancient Aliens and stuff like that. One thing that I'm starting to change my mind on about is the fucking moon has been looking insane as of recently. I don't know if that's a factor of climate change or whatever, but I'm looking at it, I'm like, that thing is fucking, I don't ever remember it being that big. It's like Jim Carrey and Bruce Almighty when he pulls the thing down closer.
Oh,
I'm like, there's no way. It's never been like that before, but I still can't take a picture of it with my iPhone. A $900 phone is not getting a good picture of that moon.
oh, I'll send you some.
Okay. Do you guys think that the UAP subject has helped out when it comes to the area of research that extends to like the Bigfoot area, or do you think that it's done more of a damage to it?
I think it's a slow trickle.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's I don't know if Shane, I'm pretty sure I sent you. I think I sent you the link to that whatever I recorded there one couple of years ago. You know that light that moved kind of slowly across the sky video.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, did I send you the other one of the something shiny up there by an airliner just a few months ago? Did I send you that? Okay, but yeah, I've seen some things like that, and I actually had a guy tell me a story. He was a coyote hunter, and he had a guy that used to play professional football. Used to be his partner. And they were out in I think in the oil fields in Oklahoma one time, and they actually had one of those silver discs up what you're talking about, Shane, landed about 20 feet in front of their pickup. The former football player was through coyote hunting after that. He never went back. But it was the silver crab, just like the Roswell incident. So I mean, it's yeah, a football player, lineman. You know, they're
Yeah,
big bats.
the big fella. He could have tackled that thing.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, he was done after that. But yeah, that's had to get me that.
Have you ever come across any researchers that have hung their hats up on the Bigfoot subject? Not just because they just don't feel like doing it anymore, but because something took it out of them to do that. I mean, you come across all these, what I would say, more dangerous experiences that people really feel actual fear. I mean, it hinders a lot of people from wanting to ever experience that again.
Yeah, I've heard of that. Where I I can't remember the guy's name right now. I think of one example at the moment of a guy who was a Bigfoot researcher, and evidently he ran into some paranormal stuff, which which is going to happen. I mean, you're not going to avoid that part of it. But I think the guy quit because he was pretty well convinced that from that moment forward it wasn't what he thought it was. And yeah, we've run across some weird stuff. We've had lights go out, audio recorders quit working at the exact same time. Uh, we've seen orbs, if an orb is the proper thing to call them. They'll be in one spot. They won't light up anything around it. It's almost as if that light is simply contained in that ball that you're looking at. And I don't know if that fits in with Bigfoot or not, to be honest with you. But it was in a Bigfoot area. So, you know, the didgeridoo sound, you know, that Jack has on recording, you know, is that part of what they can do? Is that one that hasn't been able to achieve infrasound yet? I don't know. So
That's a good thought on that.
yeah.
I
So
like that.
What about you,
it just
Shane?
makes you wonder.
As far as like people quitting,
Yeah, have you come across any researchers or any experiencers?
one of the guys that helped us start the group, he didn't quit. He just had a lot of family stuff, and I think eventually he's going to come back. His name is Jacob Gomez, and he's got a hell of a dogman story. That him and his guys were driving to Dallas, and I believe they were further south than Waco, and they saw a big black thing out there in the grass, and they drove off the road up there to go see what it was. and it was this big werewolf looking thing that was bleeding from the mouth. Like it got hit, killed, or who knows? It could have got hit in the middle of the night and it made it that far. And like they saw it 5 feet, like close up. Like they didn't get out of the truck. They all just kind of looked out, like, what the hell? And there's no phones. You know, they would have had to bring I don't know, a Nikon or one of those little paper cameras or something if they would have thought of it. But they were just going to work. But I expect Jacob to come back. He's great in the field. Steve, you'd like him, man. He's kind of like Will's son. He's like armed to the teeth. Like, Jacob, don't stand next to the fire. Everything's gonna go off on you.
I have to ask just on the basis of a lot of these stories that I've heard and experiences that I've heard, do you ever think that these are not just one isolated incident? Like there's always multiple things going on at once, whether it's like seeing orbs as well too, but there seems like every experience or every story has a little bit more than just one thing to it, but other factors that start getting included as well. And it just that makes me find correlation to the paranormal a little bit more than I do with like the extraterrestrial stuff. I know there's a little bit of I wouldn't say it's lore, but a little ideas out there about UFOs and Bigfoot being an extraterrestrial creature. Possibly, I don't know. But the paranormal stuff, I think, has a little bit more weight to it for me, just on the basis of the conversations I've had. Just weird experiences, whether it's a certain time of the day or time of night. Obviously, certain locational things, but also just certain energies that people start experiencing, whether it's like brain fog or something like that. Just randomly, they feel really tired all of a sudden. You know, there's just something else that's going on that I've heard people experience from their own physical well-being at the time that they see these experiences, where I start going, is that something that that thing is doing to you that is causing those reactions? Or is that something in the air? Is that just a certain peak time? I mean, we know the moon, for instance, if it's a full moon, it messes with the tides. So it's not crazy to think that if, a creature or something like that in a certain time period where it shows itself, is there other factors that are going on that make it such a conglomeration of events, if that makes any sense to you? I kind of ranted, but it came out.
No, that's good. I'm gonna go ahead and get into the other story. It's well, Shane, we went to the dead end road the night that Dustin had his sighting, and it was at Kendall and Lauren, Sydney. My daughter was there. Mr. Bill. Who else was there? Others with us that night or not? I don't.
It's really hard to tell, man. Going out there all the time and stuff.
Yeah, but I remember that was the night that Dustin he brought his canoe, and he had a brace that he would hook to the bumper of his truck, to support the canoe. And you remember Kendall walked into that the first time, and we cringed, and we thought, oh man, that probably hurt. And Kendall he played it off, it's like, no, I'm okay. Well, then when he walked into it the second time, that's when Shane and I just about hit the ground laughing because he had done it a second time. Well, that was the night that I think I'd done an alcohol or two or whatever there. And Shane, he walked down the road away from the rest of us. We were all just standing around the truck, and that's when Dustin had a sighting. And Shane, I know you remember because we all walked out there in the woods to where Dustin saw the subject at, and I never heard it leave. I don't know if you could hear any footsteps or anything else, but we walked out.
Yeah,
there.
but let's see, it was December.
Yes.
All of that out there, sometimes the bayou overflows,
Yeah.
and the ground was almost dried spongy.
It was real dry, crunchy leaves at that time. And it seems like we should have heard something, but I never heard anything left. That's why I started looking in the trees to see, did this thing jump from tree to tree? That was the amazing thing, because what he saw, he got a pretty good look at it because there was moonlight. And but I don't know where or how it disappeared without making any noise. Like
Me either, man. That's why I'm just like, we just get toyed with out in the woods sometimes.
Oh yeah, yeah. We're definitely way outmatched when we're out there in their element. No doubt about it.
Do you think we underestimate their own intelligence?
I don't. I don't.
Oh,
I don't underestimate it like I used to. I'll
Okay.
say
look
that.
at it, yeah. I think what got to me was, uh, especially out at the creek, stepping off the bridge, maybe taking one or two steps, and then going left and getting on the hard stuff. Like, I'm not leaving my prints up here. Is all I can think. So, man, the intelligence is mind blowing.
Yeah.
We just look like a bunch of idiots out in the woods.
Do you
Mhm.
believe they climb more than you think?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I never really heard them climbing before. I would think something that big probably would have the ability to, but I just don't know if you would. I don't know. It's unfathomable. The size of it, first of all, being able to climb a tree like that. I don't think I've ever seen Shaq even get 2 feet off the ground. It makes me think like, I mean, if this could be possible that they could be climbing around and using that. And that's why if we do get footprints, we have footprints, but that's probably how they're able to escape certain areas. Like you mentioned, you not being able to hear to leave. And then you check the trees. That was my first thought.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I started doing because I couldn't hear it leave, and we were shining bright flashlights around. Couldn't see it. So that's why I started looking up the trees, kind of wondering about it. But yeah, they climb trees a lot more often than what people would think. Sentinel trees. Up there at Shelley's place, Shane, I found one that I believe probably could be a sentinel tree up there on the ridge. Whenever you're going to go in her pasture, not too far in there, up on the left on the ridge, I found a tree that had a lot of traffic in it, and I don't remember, it was 20 feet up or something like that. There was a real good limb for something to be on. You know, I know squirrels, they'll leave a trail on a tree, you know, when they go up and down it a lot. But it seemed like it might have had a little more traffic than just squirrels. But I'm pretty sure that Shelly's back porch could be seen from that tree.
Okay. Yeah, that ridge, it kind of does look down at her house.
I mean, it does.
And her property is awesome because it goes right into the Washita National Forest.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. And up
we
there just
actually saw a light up there, Steven, when I was out there with Kendall and Dustin and Bill. We tried to debunk it, and we couldn't.
yeah. Yeah, I remember when y'all were talking about that. That was that's one of those really interesting things is because these lights or these orbs, whatever we're going to call them, you know, they seem to have intelligence. Yeah, I can remember a time that when William and I were out, and my daughter and one of her friends were with us, and we were watching this orb, we'll call it, and we've been watching it for several minutes. And I finally told William, "So I'm going to go ahead and get my little camera out. I'm going to video this." Well, by the time I go to the truck and I get my camera out, well, it goes out. I mean, it was almost as if the thing had intelligence and knew what I was going to do. And it, I think after I put my camera back up, I think we did get to see it one more time. But that was it kind of that's the weird stuff that kind of makes you wonder sometimes if we're not this isn't just a rabbit hole that we're chasing.
Yeah. Well, I did see a video recently with an orb, and I've never seen this before. You got a tree, and you got the orb. It's moving, kind of, you know, switchbacking up the tree. But there's a branch right here, and when it got up here, and kind of came down, the branch moved. And I was like, wait a second.
Yeah, that's really interesting there. You know, you've probably seen Paul's video of the orb that I think they got what Sam Houston, Paul Ragsdale, the video Paul Ragsdale has. Yeah, so that's that was a blue one, I believe, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so
Well,
and I
guys,
mean it moved around freely.
I want to get a wrapping point here, but when it comes to exploring the Bigfoot subject more for any people that are looking to maybe dive into more research or things of that sort, before I get you guys to promote your links and everything, and Shane promote your Facebook group as well too, what would you recommend for new researchers or anyone looking to explore the subject further, like sifting more, I guess, beginner subjects? Uh, Areas that they should look into first before just Googling it and trying to find the most popular video, obviously.
Definitely find, if you can, in your area, a group of like-minded folks, uh, and just start kind of getting out there. You have to acclimate yourself to this because it's not just camping, but you have to love to camp, which I do, and I know Steven does, and that's like number one. The bonus is looking for monsters in the woods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Join the group.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't have to hook up with the most famous people or the most well-known people out there. Just find, like Shane said, find some folks that are interested in the subject. And for me, I'm always going to tell people, if you're looking for this, if you're looking for the Bigfoot, find something that has water in it, moving water, and go to looking in that area. Uh, Kind of do some research and see what people have been talking about. And I mean, just go look. You may or may not find what
Go
you're after.
outside, get some fresh air. That's all you
There
need
you
to
go. Get
do.
off the couch.
Yeah. Back off Facebook for a little bit. But unless you're checking out Shane's Facebook group, then that's okay. You can be on
Yeah,
there for a couple of minutes.
yeah,
But
Oh yeah.
yeah. With that, I mean, just go through what Shane and his group have done, what they've posted, what they've discovered. That right there will get you on the right path to find what you're interested in. You know,
but
And you get
because
to meet people like Steven.
yeah,
I mean, I'd have never known Steven Hill if I never got into the subject matter.
I wouldn't know you
And
if
I'm
I
a
didn't know
tech.
Steven.
That's
And I wouldn't
true.
know Steven if I didn't know Cecil. Good God, Cecil has opened me up to. I'm not talking about the wall, whatever the Tartarus thing that he keeps mentioning over and over again. I don't want to talk about it anymore.
you don't want to talk about
Well,
the house
maybe I need to meet Steven now.
area.
No, Cecil mentions it way too much. It killed it for me. Um,
Oh, I,
no,
I, I
but
should I should have told Shane we could have done a deep dive in that.
I do appreciate the time you guys have given me on individual episodes and doing this one. I know we planned this like just a couple days ago, but I really appreciate the time you guys have given me today and waking up early for me to be able to do this. But is there a place, Steven, we're going to start with you, where you can find your links, and then Shane, we're going to end with you to promote your links and Facebook page.
Yeah, I mean, I do have a Facebook, uh, just my personal Facebook thing. I mean, if somebody wants to send me a link there, they can message me, whatever. And I do have a YouTube channel. I've got a few videos on it. Just my name. So I don't know. Maybe they'll tap in above the Saline River or something like that. Maybe they'll be able to find my YouTube page. That's I've got some stuff on there. It's kind of covers what I do in the field, and I even have a video of the eclipse that took place on April the 8th on there. So that was pretty fun.
Shane.
Yeah. Join us on Facebook, Southern Bigfoot Alliance. That's a great way to meet people. I do a roll call every once in a while. Where are you from? People list out where they're from. You never know. You might have a neighbor that's looking into the subject matter as you are. So definitely SBA, and then the Cryptoholics show, which we barely dabble in. So busy lately. But we'll be at the Kiamichi Mountain Bigfoot Conference next Friday.
Well, I'll link the links that you guys just said and any other links I have on previous episodes with you guys. I'll put in there as well too. So everyone can check out in the description. There are links to any of their stuff that they mentioned. And thank you everybody for listening to this episode of Out of the Blank. Stay tuned for next episode.